Hello, my dear students and the rest of the learners. Welcome to part 3 of a 22-part series of tutorials in Manage Database System using Microsoft Access and SQL. In this presentation, we are going to be looking at the merits and demerits of using a database and the identify database concepts. My name is MemJM, or you can simply call me Emily Swap. Let's begin by looking at the merits, that is the advantages of using a database. For example, Microsoft Access Database by the title or by the name Emily Swap School. One, database gives you what we call data independence. This is whereby data that is held in your database is held in such a way that changes the structure of the database or schema does not affect any programs used to access the data. Number two, we have data consistency. Each item of data or record is held only once without any repetitions, and therefore there is no danger of a record being updated in one system and not the other. Number three, we have what we call control of data redundancy. Now, what is controls, or when we say that database controls data redundancy as a merit or an advantage, what do we mean? We mean that in file-based systems, the same information may be held in several files. Now, this wastes space and makes update of records more time-consuming. And therefore, when you create a database, you are able to minimize data redundancy. Number four is data integrity. The database management systems or database management software provides users with the ability to specify constraints on data, such as making a field entry essential or using validation rules so as to ensure that the data which is entered in the database is correct and it does not contain errors. We also have enhanced data security. When you make use of a database management software, you can be able to ensure that only authorized users can access that information and they can modify the database. So with database management software, you can be able to implement various security measures. For example, making use of passwords to deter who accesses the database and who accesses which object in the database. Number five is centralized control of data. The database administrator can be able to control who has access to what and will structure the database to match the needs of the organization. So we call that centralized control of data. A single person, who we are calling a database administrator, can have the rights to determine who is assigned what and who does what, who is assigned which password and which password is set, who makes what change. Number six is that with a database management software, with a database, more information can be available to the users. So users have access to a wide range of data that was previously held in separate departments and sometimes on incompatible formats. In other words, with the use of a database management software or with the use of a database, all the information pertaining to a certain subject can be stored together regardless of which departments kept it. And therefore, by just click of a button, one is able to access all the data that relates to a certain subject in one place instead of searching for it in the various or from various departments. In addition, a database allows or enables increased productivity. That's number seven. The database management software provides an easy-to-use query language that allows users to get immediate response from their queries rather than having to use programmers who will write queries. So in other words, with the use of a database, You can be able to make use of a query or generate a query like using wizard, and you can be able to get the answers that you are looking for. Number 8 is with the use of a database, we have what we call built-in UI. So with database or with a database, you can be able to make use of forms and reports that let non-technical staff enter and print data without any knowledge about SQL language. So we have what we call the built-in user interface. UI means user interface, or stands for user interface. So with a database management software, the users do not need to interact with tables direct or data in the tables directly. They can do so with the use of forms for entry and forms for display. That's what we mean. Another advantage is quick reports. With the use of a database, like Microsoft Access database, you can be able to make use of an object we call reports, through which you can be able to generate any kind of information. And this information can come from either queries or can come directly from the tables, but in the form of a report. So with the use of a database, queries and reports are generated faster and more efficiently. In addition, another advantage is that databases enables backup and recovery options. So with the use of a database management software, you can be able to create backups for your information or for your data. And in the case there is an error in your data or there's a problem, you can be able to recover that data or that information. Another advantage of making use of a database is access specific. So with the use of a database, you can be able to generate what we call the rapid graphical user interface-based application building using forms and reports and easy distribution. Another advantage is concurrent control and backup options. So Access supports multi-user up to limits. So those are the main advantages. Now, anything with an advantage also has a disadvantage. So what are the merits or the disadvantages of using a database? Number 1, there is what we call scalability. Access is best for small or medium data volumes, tens of thousands of records. But when it comes to very large data sets or many concurrent users, database is not very good. What is best is what we call SQL Server. Another disadvantage is concurrency, or there is a risk of corruption. Multi-user access across unreliable networks can corrupt access files. So various users or a single user can create an error or enter data which is not correct or do something that may cause an error in the data, and that error will be transferred across all the users. So splitting the database and keeping the back end on a stable server is very important. We also have security or migration as a disadvantage. Access security is limited. So migrating to enterprise systems requires planning. There is complexity of design. It needs planning and normalization. Performance limits for very large data sets. So access is not for very large enterprise scale databases. There is also data dependency or dependency on the correct configuration to maintain security and integrity. We also have what we call single file vulnerability in access, if not split. So data can be corrupted if one is not careful with the multi-user access. Maintenance and migration effort, when system grows, may also need migration to SQL Server. So that's a disadvantage in Microsoft Access. Let's lastly look at the procedure for managing a database system. So number one, you need to plan. Before you create a database, you need first of all to do the planning. Here, you need to gather the user requirements and draw an ERD on a paper. Once you have done that, you do the design. And the design, you create normalized tables with the primary keys and foreign keys relationships. Number three, you proceed and you create tables. Now you build tables, set data types, validation, and default values. Then you follow the following steps to create a table. You click on create, then table design. Then you define your fields and your primary keys. Number four, you create relationships. So you use the relationships window and enforce refresh integrity. How do you create relationships? You click on database tools menu, then click on relationships. And how do you do that? You do that by dragging one key from one table to a similar key in the next table. And then when a prompt appears, you click on enforce referential integrity. We are going to learn how to create these relationships in my subsequent presentation in the series. Once you have done that, number five is you build the forms or you create the forms through which you can do the entry into. And you also generate queries for data entry and extraction. So you build the forms for data entry and you create the queries to extract data of your choice. How do you do that? You click on create. Then if you are creating a form, you can use wizard. So you click on form wizard. If you are creating a query, you click on create. Then you can click on query design and you decide the fields from which your data will come from. And then you save the form for retrieval, or you save the form and you also save the query. So save retrieval and action queries. Number six, or step number six, is to create or generate reports. Now these reports can either be in printed form or you can just forward them to the required person using an email in soft copy. Now some of the reports that you generate, you can either print them or export them. Examples can include financial reports, enrollment reports, lists, including transcripts when it comes to trainees. How do you create a report? You click on the create button, choose report wizard, select the fields that through which the report will be generated or that contains the data that you want to generate or that you want to produce in a report. Then format that report for printing once you have ensured that all the necessary fields have been selected. Then number seven is to test your database. Prepare test cases, run CRUD and integration tests, and document the results. Now you can use a test copy, log results in test results table, for example. You can also run queries with various options so that you can see what you are going to generate. And you can even generate a query, like a query called orphan enrollments. That's just an example of a query you can be able to generate for the purposes of testing your database. Number eight is to deploy the database you have created. After you have tested and you have found that your database is working well, and it is also generating the required data, you can then deploy it in your organization or in the place of work to be used. How do you deploy? You can split the database with front end and back end. Establish shared back end, create front end copies for users. Then, As the database continues to be used, it's also sometimes important to maintain that database so that you ensure that it continues to meet the initial objectives. Now, as part of maintenance, you can create backups, compact repair, update indexes, and monitor performance. And with that, my dear students and the rest of the learners, we have come to the end of part 3. You can proceed and watch as well as practice part 4 of the series, in which we are going to learn about database design concepts. Congratulations, therefore, for learning part 3 of the 2-part series on merits and demerits of using a database in managed database system using Microsoft Access and SQL. You can access the rest of the parts in the series, as well as other computer or ICT videos, by clicking or tapping on Demerits ICT YouTube channel below this video. To subscribe to the channel, tap on subscribe button below this video in YouTube if it's not currently reading as subscribed. For any further correspondence, kindly write it to us through the email demerits@gmail.com. Thank you very much for listening to me. Let's meet in part 4 of the series, and God bless.